The main characters that we focused on in seasons 1, 2, and 3 are Deku, main character boy, obviously, gotta have him. Byakugan, angry murderer blonde boy. Byakugan, angry murder blonde boy, who is the worst example of that trope in anime. Like, say what you will about Sasuke, say what you will about Vegeta, like... Hello and welcome to Add It to the List, the show where we binge watch a season of an anime and then talk about whether we think it should go on your watch list. My name is Jack, and with me as always is Forrest.
Hello.
And today we're going to do things a little bit different. Normally we watch either an early or the first season of an anime, but today, beware spoilers for the fourth season of My Hero Academia. So, Forrest, before I ask you the question, a little bit of my context with the franchise and why I wanted to hop in on season 4 for any of y'all listening, is I had watched the show up through season 3, and I had planned on watching season 4 as it came out. But season 4 starts with an in-canon recap episode, and then an anime filler recap episode back to back. And I wasn't having that at the time. Like I was like, I'll come back maybe, but it burnt me so hard on it that I'm like, no. So this is where I had left off. How about you?
I mean, basically the same. I was going to watch it week to week, and I actually got like 5 or 6 episodes in, which I thought I'd gotten like 3 episodes in. But yeah, that was it. And then I just kind of stopped because a lot of the beginning of the first arc here is like kind of boring, if I'm not going to lie. But it gets better. But yeah, I had watched all of the other seasons kind of around the times that they had come out, so... But also, right before we watched this, I had also just gotten caught up in the manga, like, from the get-go. So I had pretty much everything super fresh in my mind.
That's fair. I, on the other hand, know nothing. I have no intimate knowledge of anything that happens after the end of this season. However, I've been on the internet for longer than the show has existed, which means that when the show... And don't get me wrong, this is still a very popular show. But when the show was the hotness and everybody who's an asshole who reads the manga, who wants to make a point of letting everybody know that they know what happens next because they read the manga, I know like the big plot arcs. Like I know what happens with One for All, for example. I know that big thing. So, for those of you who have been living under a rock, or just managed to stay very spoiler-free, My Hero Academia is like the breakout manga of like 2012, 2013. It may not even be that early. I feel like it's been out for a while by this point.
My Hero Academia started publication in 2014.
2014 seems late for all like that. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's been going now for
8 years.
8 years, yeah.
God dang. But yeah, so it was the breakout show of 2014. Like, it was pretty much one of the next generation's big 3, like, without exception. Like, everybody had it on a list of like that. And for what it's worth, it's a lot of fun. It is a show about a boy who is born without a capital Q quirk. Now, in this setting, quirks are genetic mutations, the next step in humanity, that are just, you get a superpower. And they run the gambit from, I can make a little bit of drizzle come out of my nose, all the way to a cannonball shoots out of my mouth, or I'm actually a slug person. Some of them are superpowers, some of them are weird biology things.
The heteromorphs, as they call them in universe, basically.
Is that the people who have like physical ones?
Yeah, like people that look like animals or just have weird features that are not human-like.
Like Bird Boy?
Yeah.
My sweet Bird Boy?
Well, there's like a whole plot about heteromorphs having a lot of prejudice. It's very on the nose just about racism.
Oh.
But yeah, it's kind of becomes
not in the first 4 seasons, there's not.
No, yeah, it becomes a thing later down the line, but
yeah, so so at the point that the story takes place, not having a quirk is super rare. It's like only a 10th of the population does not have a quirk. But because superpowers are just a thing, so too are supervillains. And because supervillains are a thing, superheroing is a profession. You can become a superhero. There are schools, much like how there are like performing arts schools, there are superhero readiness schools. So our main character, Midoriya, young Midoriya Shonen, Deku, because of a nickname that's a play on words based around the kanji, based around the katakana, or something like that. It's very deeply lost in translation. But Deku,
I mean,
main
Deku, I
boy.
guess, roughly translates to no good or like not cool.
Yeah. So
yeah.
In the first season, they established that it's a bullying nickname that he gets because like one of the characters in his actual name can be read like a word that sounds like Deku or that like looks like Deku. Like it's a play on words of the written word, so it doesn't translate too terrible to English. But also, that's sort of what happens when you take things out of its original language.
I just actually looked into what the Deku means, and the word Deku is a Japanese word that refers to like a wooden doll or puppet, which, like, you know how in Legend of Zelda there's like the Dekus, they're like the little
Deku trees,
yeah,
like the Deku sprouts.
Yeah, because they're wooden, and then, but I guess those dolls traditionally have no arms or legs, so then it kind of became a slang word to like insult someone and kind of imply that they're just useless.
All right, so it's like calling someone a stump on a log.
Yeah, basically.
Okay. Anyway,
so a very, very contextual Japanese language thing that I definitely don't feel like the story like gets across that well. Like, he does say that it means like, oh, I'm no good, but then he like makes it his own, and it whatever.
All of that happens in season 1. Like, the show does a very good job of contextualizing it, just to like, again, it like that joke and like that significance isn't for us, a Western audience. But so Deku is born quirkless, one of like 10% of the population, but he wants to be a superhero. He wants to be the bestest superhero because of the bestest superhero, and to a certain extent, the bestest himbo, All Might, is the greatest superhero, and he's awesome and rad and inspiring. Long and the short of it, Deku, spoilers for season 1, spoilers for like the first 2 episodes of the show. Yeah, it's literally, this happens in episode 2. Deku gets given All Might's quirk, which is the one for all. There's a lot to it. It's not that important right now. Right now it's manifesting itself as big, strong punch.
I feel like
so Deku gets his ass into hero school as a result of having big, strong punch.
I was going to say, I feel like you could literally tell someone, okay, this guy is the main character of the story. He meets the number one hero, and this guy doesn't have a quirk. What do you think happens?
Batman. So by this point, we're at season 4. So 3 seasons of superhero school has happened. There's some stuff with villains trying to reshape society. There's some idealism behind it. Ideology, rather, behind it. And some of it's good, some of it's bad. But the events of season 4 are really 3 mini arcs, which are somewhere in between filler and time skip, whilst also giving character. Like, it's weird. I have spoken quite disparagingly about filler in the past, on this podcast, I'm sure. But some of the greatest character moments happen in filler because they aren't beholden to A, the main characters, who don't get to be interesting because they're main characters, or B, the confines of, like, this has to be relevant. So a lot of the best character development happens in filler, I feel like. Naruto Shippuden, the Three Tails arc, is one of the greatest arcs in Shippuden, and it doesn't matter at all. But in the short span of that arc, we are introduced to two unique characters. They're very well fleshed out. Their relationship is very well developed. And Naruto learns something. He doesn't get to keep learning that thing because all of a sudden we're back in the main continuity and what he learned can't change things. But within the context of the Three Tails arc, it's an incredibly moving and valuable lesson for Naruto. Also, it doesn't revolve around Sasuke, which makes it better inherently.
I hate Sasuke.
And so I honestly feel like these three arcs in season 4 really are my favorite moments of this show up to this point, because it doesn't focus on characters that we've spent 3 seasons focusing on. Characters get to do something fun and they just have fun with what they do, right? Like, we get to, like, the main characters that we focused on in seasons 1, 2, and 3 are Deku, main character boy, obviously, gotta have him. Byakugan, angry murderer blonde boy. Byakugan, angry murderer blonde boy, who is the worst example of that trope in anime. Like, say what you will about Sasuke, say what you will about Vegeta, like, there are moments where Byakugan is publicly, like, Hannibal Lectered because he's threatening people so much. And this guy gets to be enrolled in a school that teaches him how to fight better. He's constantly threatening people's lives. He doesn't, like, do anything about it, but, like, he's constantly telling people that he's going to murder them. He's just, like, he's a terrible character. And if you ship him with literally anybody, A, he's a high schooler, and B, you're wrong, because that man needs to be put in a comfortable vehicle and taken to therapy.
I do have things to say about Bakugo, because I feel like he's not the greatest character, but I feel like he's like almost too exaggerated. Like, he's really just annoying, and it's like that just kind of like brings his character down. And I will genuinely say that I think his character gets better as the story goes along, which
God, I hope so.
Is, you know, good, because that's kind of what a character like his should do. But yeah, very early on, and like up to this season even, he's really just the annoying character, and he's always screaming at people.
We focus on him. We focus on Icy Hot Patch, who is the son of the number 2 hero Endeavor, Big Flame Man. We'll talk about him.
Shoto Todoroki.
Yes. Icy Hot Patch. He's one half ice, he's one half fire. And then a character who's actually fallen off pretty hard by this point, but who's a big focus in season 2, Car Engine Calves.
Okay. His name is Ida.
Those are like the characters that we spend way too much time on for the first 3 seasons. And it makes sense, because on the one hand, like, these characters are like supposed to be foils for Deku, and like they're the ones that are like the strongest in the class, so like they're the ones who his like progression is like judged against. But God, that's way too many, when it's all said and done, boring boys to focus on without contextualizing or like really giving time to the other like 9 kids in the class, most of which are interesting, with the exception of Grape-kun and French Boy. I hate Grape-kun and French Boy. Grape-kun is the pervert character. He is an aggressively exaggerated example of the pervert character.
He deserves to die.
He deserves to die. There is a moment in season 3, I want to say, where they're doing like a training camp thing, and everybody's like digging deep into like their real inspiration to be a hero, and his is perversion. His big character motivation is, I want to become big and important enough to touch breasts. Just like, really? Really? We're spending more screen time on you than Jiro, who's just Ramona Flowers in a superhero world. Like, we're spending more time on you than Uravity, like the actual like love interest or crush at the very least of the main character. She gets less screen time than pervert grape boy. God dang.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, he gets so much screen time.
Yeah, well, because he's he's
funny. Haha.
The author attempts to utilize him as comedy, but it's just like that's such a just an overused, and also this is just a prime example of it just being terrible. It's just sad that this character even exists.
Pervert characters aren't funny. Pervert characters are incredibly awkward when the setting is high school.
Yeah. I was going to say something about your comment on filler, because like I feel like we should lay out what we think filler is, because I feel like I don't really find these arcs to necessarily be filler, because like there is things that happen and like they are important, but I guess I also don't know if you consider them filler. You just fair. Brought up that word.
Yeah, so thank you for giving me space to clarify, because I may have oversimplified things. What I was trying to say is this season feels weird because each of the 3 sort of mini arcs that comprise this season feel like filler, but they also feel like a time skip, but they also feel like character development episodes. Like, we get a lot for most of the cast in these episodes. We get an incredible lot for a handful of them. There's a little bit of power progression, and genuinely, it feels like a vehicle to get them to the end of the school year. Especially in the last couple episodes, it's like, yeah, and then summer became fall, and it's November already. And it's like, oh, okay, cool, thank you. Because like that's one of the things that happens in the show in general, is that we spend way too much time. Like seasons 1, 2, and I think 3 are all like within like the span of a couple of months. So like the time skip helps. Like the pushing the plot helps a lot. But so filler for me, I think filler, when it's all said and done, filler for me is something that you know's not going to be relevant again.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
And sometimes it's not filler in the traditional sense of we did this because we caught up with the manga and we need to buy time. Sometimes it's actual manga arcs that are just like, well, nothing we learn here is going to come up again. Yeah, but that isn't to say that any of these actually are filler. I mean, the school festival arc is probably filler, but it's fun. It's super fun. This season was incredibly fun. I liked it more than I thought I would. I would skip episodes 1 and 2. Actually, when I first watched My Hero, I watched it when I was in charge of an after-school program, and one of the events that I did was Anime Club. So I watched season 1 for the first time after the club had already watched episodes 1 and 2. So I started My Hero Academia journey on episode 3. I would recommend starting your My Hero Academia journey on episode 3 of season 1, because everything that happens in episode 1 and 2 will be contextualized through flashbacks, and you will not lose anything. In fact, it honestly makes the flashbacks feel better because they don't feel like you're losing time to telling you something you already know. Anyway, highly recommend doing that for season 4 as well, because like I said, recap and then filler recap is how season 4 starts. Yeah, in general, this season is awesome. It's wonderful. Like, we get to dive deep into Red Riot, who is Spiky Boy. He's like I forget his actual name, but like I'm gonna call him Red Riot because
I mean, Red
remember that
Riot.
more.
I think Red Riot is like one of the better superhero names in this show.
Oh yeah, superhero names are okay. Before I get
Like
going,
a lot of them aren't very good.
some superhero names are all over the place in this universe. There's Mount Lady, who becomes Big Woman. There's Rocklock, who locks inorganic, like, no, not even inorganic. He locks like cement. No, it is inorganic.
It can be any material, just not a human.
Yeah, he locks material into place, but his name is Rocklock. We have Night Eye, who does not have night vision. We have Hawk, who has wings. We have Endeavor, who's a fireman. And now that I think about it, I feel like Endeavor has to be like a fire pun because there's also a Pokemon, Talonflame, whose like signature move is Endeavor, or at least how you set him up as a sweeper is with Endeavor, or Endeavor is really critical to his kit. I forget what it is. I feel like it may be like another thing like Deku, where it's like it just didn't make the translation. Anyway, like All Might, like the disparity in hero names is incredible. Like,
but I mean, I think that's also kind of cool. I just think that some of them aren't that great.
Are awful. Some of them are like, stupid. Like
I don't
Uravity.
I don't really mind like the whole like breadth and like wide range of different names because that's cool, and it's like you're not going to live in a world where everyone wants to have similar sounding hero names. So, but then like some of them are just like, okay, that's just not a good name.
Yeah,
I think with something way better.
I think I was doing a poor job of saying my point, but that's basically my point. It's such a wide net, and we don't get that many good ones. And then there's the best superhero name, Fat Gum.
Oh yeah,
which is wonderful because when people refer to him in the shorthand, they just call him Fat.
Yeah.
Honestly, I love Fat Gum. Fat Gum is best boy.
Yeah, I really like him a lot too.
He's actually got a very sick power as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like we get a lot of digging into anyway, the point that I was going to make, we get like a lot of like the story behind Red Riot, who's just sort of been around for 3 seasons up to this point. But not only do we get his backstory and his motivation, but we also get to see like him be a badass, which is really wonderful, especially when your power is basically just turning your skin into rock. But he does it in like, it's contextualized in such a fantastic way. And this season does a very fun thing that I don't remember if the other seasons do, but it builds and swells these very dramatic moments. And this season in particular has a lot of fun rather than getting to a crescendo cutting sound. Like things get quiet as like action is still going on, but like the moment that the scene's built to is happening, it's quiet. It happens, I think, in all of the 3 mini arcs, but it's a very powerful moment each of the times. And I don't remember if it's a thing that My Hero does in general or if it's something that they started doing in this season, but it works. So Forrest.
Hello.
Clean take. Let's do it again. So Forrest, for season 4 and My Hero in general, would you add it to the list?
I think so. Since I've been experiencing My Hero lately and like experienced the full breadth of My Hero in the manga. I don't know why I've used the word breadth twice in this episode, but it's really good. And I do genuinely think that My Hero is like one of the better shonens, especially like long running ones. I think that the characters are all pretty compelling. For me personally, I think the world is probably the most compelling. A lot of the other heroes are kind of more compelling than Deku and Bakugo.
Preach!
I don't really necessarily care about Deku and Bakugo. Deku has had some really good moments, but just overall it's a fun experience, and I do think it's pretty good at character writing. I really like Todoroki myself. Like Todoroki, I think I mean, he's kind of just the kind of character that's up my alley, just like the broody emo boy. But I do genuinely like his character arc, and I guess anime wise, this anime looks really good. Like it has always been pretty high budget because they're doing what I think you should do with a long running shonen, is just do it season by season and not to try to do it like week to week. So on top of that, like pacing wise, it's pretty solid as well. So yeah, I would say just give it a chance. And if you don't get all the way to season 4, you don't get all the way to season 4. But yeah, I think it's worth it.
That's fair. It's very funny that you said that emo brooding boy is up your alley, and yet you hate Sasuke as much as I do.
I mean, Sasuke is just not a good version of that character. Sasuke is like if you wanted to do that character, but just not do it well.
Fair enough. It's just, he's such the titular emo boy that I'm just like, all right, okay.
But like, so this is an aside, but I've been doing a lot of thinking about this because since I've been reading Naruto, I've been thinking about why Vegeta is one of my favorite characters. And I know Vegeta is also a terrible person and has done a lot of terrible things. But I think that the thing about Vegeta that makes him a more compelling character than Sasuke is that Vegeta kind of starts off like comically evil. Like he was raised to be evil. So like, yeah, he's done terrible things. But I think the way that he slowly shifts to being a better person is just more interesting. I don't think you could never forgive him for what he's done, and I don't think anyone should, but it's just more interesting to see that character progression, and I think Sasuke's character is just so, like, he doesn't have good motivations. Like, sure, his whole family was killed, but he, like, kind of just continues down this path. And just a lot of the reasons he continues down that path aren't very good.
That's fair.
That's just me. That was a
we
long
should
aside.
Definitely do an aside
where
we just
like,
sit down for like 30 minutes. We should definitely do an aside where we just like sit down for 30 minutes and talk about this, because I do think this would be a fun like little bonus content. Plus, it's just a fun conversation to have. But it's interesting because before I give mine, it's interesting because I honestly want it, like, yes, Sasuke and Vegeta are both the Lancer, but I would not consider them the same character trope. Like, Vegeta is not an emo boy. He's not a moody emo boy. He's the quiet, angry boy, which, you know, they look the same, but they're not the same. Anyway.
Well, Jack, would you add it to your list?
Yeah, with a very big asterisk. If you have a low tolerance for high school bullshit, whoo-wee, this is not the show for you. It's getting better as the seasons go on, but the first couple of seasons especially are so high school tropey because guess what? They're freshmen in high school, right? Like, it's very aggressively high school, and if that type of content just takes you out of it, then that type of content takes you out of it, and it's kind of hard to get through. That being said, you also get a lot of the fun, like, high school moments. Like, you get the sports festival, you get the, like, sports tournaments, and, like, you get them in this hero, like, the superhero context. And what I will say is this show does a very fun job. It does a very good job of being fun and building a world that at first you don't really see it because we're introducing the characters and blah, 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 but the world does have consequences, and like there is an internal logic to like, yeah, what is the impact of having everyday weapons of mass destruction be the guy sitting next to you, right? Like, quirks are everywhere, and you can't police everybody's quirk all of the time. Don't get me wrong, there are laws about it, but like, villains exist because like, yeah, that dude who just looks like a dude, well, his quirk is he can melt everything he looks at. Right? Like, it's that levels of ridiculous. And so there's like what it means to have like a functioning society. They're starting to play with it more, and they've been like introducing it in like a very lofty sense. since season 1. Like season 2 is where it like really takes off about like societies and superheroes and like the ideals behind them, and then season 3 tries to build on it a little bit, but
I mean, the next like 2 seasons really start to get into just like the impacts of a superpower, like a society that basically is structured around superheroes, and what happens when society loses faith in those superheroes, which I also think is a very compelling storyline.
Yeah. So yeah, yes, big asterisk. And yeah. So what I will say is what you said is a good introduction to Spoiler Town, which is shit's happened that started to shake the faith of superhero society. Arc 1 focuses on a set of reoccurring villains called the League of Villains. They're a group of reoccurring villains that were established in the last 3 seasons, who up till this point really hadn't gotten any development and were just sort of there. They had a vague semblance of a point. They were very vague and very menacing, but like their real ideology kind of didn't have legs to stand on. But this season, they're really doubling down on bam, bam, bam ideology of it. They sort of get into bed with the remnants of the Yakuza. And that's actually another thing that this season does very interestingly, is it introduces, normal organized crime kind of doesn't know what to do with itself when supervillains are a thing. And so Overhaul is this new villain for this arc, who is a remnant of a Yakuza family, who's also trying to make a point about superhero society. They sort of start working with the League of Villains. Long and the short of it is they stop him, but he's a very fun vehicle for A, the League of Villains to show a little bit of themselves, and B, the League of Villains to get a very powerful threat, which are these bullets that can take someone's quirk away. And also C, introduce a soon-to-be very important character by the name of Eri, who, credit where it's due, I thought I would hate, because she is child character, and I thought she was going to be obnoxious as hell. But the show, okay, I should have said at the start, trigger warnings for extreme violence and child abuse. Not neglect, abuse in every way, shape, or form. And don't get me wrong, neglect is a form of abuse, but child abuse, physical, emotional, it is heavy. But the show really does give you a good look into how the way that the heroes interact with it really gives you a good look into like the characters and their motivations. And it also it makes you feel for the child. And so when she becomes kind of part of the crew later, it's like, wow, I actually don't mind you being here. And like a big part of her is like they're like teaching her how to be a normal kid again. Yeah. In a way that's not obnoxious. Like I thought, especially at the end, like spoilers for like the third part, like the third arc, I really thought she was going to be super obnoxious, but like, no, she's like consistently like in that, 2 weeks ago, I was locked in a torture basement having experiments ran where they were scraping my skin off, right? Like she's still that character.
Well, it's a good like progression from like arc to arc, because it's like we see the whole overhaul business, and that kind of introduces her as a character. But like rather than just forgetting she exists and just kind of being like, yeah, she just gets taken care of by the school now and that's that, she kind of becomes this vehicle for kind of showing, what what being a superhero is about, rather than just fighting villains, I guess. Because like that's kind of what the whole point of the second arc is, like the overarching theme of it all. And they use Eri as a good vehicle for that because she's been through so much. Like, she literally can't even smile anymore, which I think is a very, like, real, like, yeah, she's so traumatized that she can't be happy, you know?
And, like, the way that they do it, it's not, like, in a throwaway fashion either. It's not like, oh, this is their character gimmick where they're always straight-faced even when they're, like, cracking jokes. It's not that. It's, like, a very, you know, if not necessarily, like, respectful, but, like, it is a very, like, serious depiction of, yeah, this girl's gone through it. So you can't just tell her to be happy because it's been a while since she was that. She's also a good example of the disparity in quirks. So quirks run the gambit of my hair is sticky and I can throw lobs of my hair at people, all the way to I can rewind people. It's everything from bringing your body back to a point 2 seconds ago prior to where you broke your bones, all the way to rewinding you down to an embryo. Like, shit's whack. She rewinds DNA.
Yeah, but, well, I was going to say that, like, quirks are... What's the word that I'm looking for? What are
mutation?
Yeah, mutation. That was the word I was looking for. Like, quirks are a genetic mutation, and hers is like a further mutation. And I think that her introduction is kind of meant to be a little hint because it's brought up later in the season that there's like a concept of it's like the quirk singularity theory or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's
which
literally
is basically the quantum / like technological singularity, but
it's
for
like
genetics.
the thought that, like, as quirks like continue, like, as this genetic mutation in society continues to go deeper and deeper, and like people with different quirks like make children, like, it's going to get to a point where people just have quirks that are so powerful that the world would basically just, like, not be able to function anymore.
Yeah.
Which is a cool idea. And I think that her introduction is kind of the first little hint at, like, these possibilities, you know?
Yeah. And that's more or less the long and the short of that first arc. Special shout outs to this first arc, unless you have something that you want to talk about. But for me, special shout outs to this first arc for Fat Gum. Love my boy. He's the fat superhero. His power is he absorbs impact with his fat up to and including people. So he'll just, like, Majin Buu your ass, not like in a vor way, but you just sort of, like, sink into his tummy and he'll waddle you to the police, that sort of thing. There's a brief moment where he's up against, like, this super powered, like, mook, and he takes and absorbs so much shock that the guy is burning away fat that he's absorbed throughout the years. Yeah. And then while that's happening, he's storing that kinetic force, and that's part of the reason why he's, like, slimming down, because, like, the man is punching the fat off of him. Well, but he's like, because he's burning up so much energy, absorbing it and taking it all into a big punch. There's a very brief moment after Big Punch where he's just, like, 6-pack ripped because he doesn't have any fat anymore. And I have a very real note here that goes, oh no, he's hot.
I mean, I think that it would be worth talking about Kirishima in this instance too, because their whole fight is probably the best fight in that arc, in my opinion. Not that there's, like, a whole lot of, like, separate fights, but I think that, I mean, it's worth talking about Kirishima's little character development moment. But because, like, Kirishima is a character that we've, you know, he's been around since the beginning of school, so we know him at this point. But this is the first time where he actually gets a moment that, like, feels like it develops his character a little bit.
This is the first time we get any background on him.
And we just kind of learn more about his backstory and how, you know, he's been so terrified of being like a superhero for so long, even though his quirk is literally getting harder. Like he can just make his body like kind of just rock. It doesn't really specify. He just can harden his body, and it kind of boils down to being about him overcoming that fear, which has kind of been the whole purpose of him going to superhero school. But just
what fear, Forrest?
what fear is he trying to overcome?
Yeah.
The fear of villains. I mean, I feel like it literally boiled down to like the fear of like just confronting what's coming head on. But what were you gonna say?
So I like that's all there. What I got from it is that it's all like acting despite of fear for the sake of other people.
I guess that's kind of what I was trying to get at. But
yeah, like his big thing is his like sticking point is that as a middle schooler, a thing was happening and he wasn't brave enough to step in. And so that sort of like haunted him and caused him to like redouble down on being a chivalrous man, which I have a note here that says, at least we get to contextualize the toxic masculinity, because up to this point, everything that he's done is like, oh, that's not very like he's one step away of going do it or no balls for most of season 1, 2, and 3. But here, like, it gets a chance to be like, that's not what it's about. And like chivalry is not like the fucking neckbeard, fedora tipping, like that chivalry. That's not like his idea of it. In his flashbacks, we very much established that like it is the capability of putting others above your own self-preservation and acting despite of your fear, is really what gets hammered home there. And so yes, he goes around talking about, oh, that's so manly, I'll be a man, all of that stuff. But now at least we get that that's not what he means, you know?
But I love that moment when he actually leaps in and takes those punches for Fat Gum, so then Fat Gum can just like... And I love how Fat Gum's like, we won the shield and spear competition.
Yeah. So there is a very, very, very good line here that Fat Gum says, which is, you guys and I as well underestimated a hero named Red Riot and his chivalrous spirit. He's like, yeah, dude, y'all lost because you counted out the kid. To be fair, I also counted out the kid, but he bought me enough time to kick your ass. And it's like, yeah, you did. Get it, Fat Gum. Quick note about Fat Gum. Whenever he does cool things, ska music plays in the background. Chef's kiss. As somebody whose favorite concert they've ever been to was Real Big Fish and Less Than Jake, chef's kiss. The one belt I own is ska patterned. Anyway. The other characters that really get moments in this first arc are Flea. Sun Eater is his hero name. Yeah. I forget his actual name. I just call him Flea because when you're introduced to him, they talk about how he has the heart of a flea. He's one of the big three, top 3 kids in the school. That's all there is to that. It's like a really big, like, end of season 3, like, who are the big 3? What's their deal? Season 4 rolls around. They're just kids that are strong.
It is a very interesting thing because like they get introduced as the big 3, like the best like heroes in the school with the most, like
they're the closest to being professional heroes in skill.
But just like knowing what happens later, like I still enjoy their characters for the most part, but like it still to this day doesn't feel like they were necessary. Like they were just kind of characters that were there to be there. And I guess Lemillion is pretty important to Deku as a character. So, I mean, like, I don't think they're pointless, but it's just interesting because they never really become pro heroes.
That's fair.
Yet. So,
yeah, so the big 3 are Lemillion, which is his hero name. I forget his actual name. Big boob girl whose gimmick is she has big boobs. She shoots out like her life force in spirals, and she can use it to propulse herself. There are multiple comedy gags where a character or multiple boobs. And then Sun Eater, who's the emo boy. I love him. His power is he can, if anything that he's eaten that day, he can materialize aspects of it in his body. So yes, there's a surface level of he eats octopus every day so that he can make big octopus arms because those are useful. But also like I can harden parts of my body into clamshell like chitin or whatever clamshells are made out of. Or like I can extract like the poison or the venom from this thing and put it with these other things. He has a very cool fight. He's not really important at all.
And this was kind of the moment to develop his character because he doesn't.
He has an entire episode.
Yeah, where like we get his whole like flashback and all that.
He has an entire episode. He's pretty much the only other fun character that's that's only really matters in this arc. Lemillion is the closest to being a pro hero. He's the number one of the big three. I love him. I love him so. Little himbo.
Like him too.
He's such a himbo. We get a family flashback of him and his dad, and his dad's just like, "Yeah, do it. I'm also a himbo." And it's like, yes, wholesome boys.
Well, he has a pretty tragic part of the tragic aspect.
He is the main sacrifice of this arc 1, and I will stand by that even after we talk about who dies in arc 1.
Well, yeah.
He's like the major like emotional sacrifice in this arc. His power is that he can make anything pass through his body, including air particles, including everything. And he can do it selectively and what have you. They talk about how it's a weak quirk and how he had to train himself into using it to be strong, and I'm calling bullshit on that.
Well, but
because that's not a weak quirk. Specifically when you compare it to things like my hair is sticky, who's part of Deku's class.
Well, I think there's a difference between considering the quirk itself weak and just saying that it's weak because it requires so much work to get good at using. Like once you're really good at using it, then it's just broken.
But he specifically says, I'm not this good because my quirk's strong, because it's not. My quirk is weak. He specifically says that
exactly.
multiple times.
Which
it's
I think is like
incorrect, sir.
Because literally all he can do is pass through things. He can't really utilize that in a combat sense, but it's because...
Except for the fact that he does.
Yeah, but I'm saying because he can pass through things, then he can utilize it in a way that makes sense. It's like the quirk in and of itself is not inherently strong. It is how you utilize it that is strong.
I think
that's two things.
That is the point that he's trying to make. Yeah. But also, Byakugan, his sweat is nitroglycerin. He materializes explosions. That's a strong quirk. Deku does big punch. So big, so strong that he can fly by creating air pressure. All Might does big punch and can do the same thing. Those are inherent. Like, don't come at me with it doesn't matter how strong your quirk is. Yes, there's the inspirational aspect of even if you have a quote-unquote bad quirk, you can make it good. But you can't just say that your quirk's bad when it enables this nonsense.
Yeah, I know. But he also does talk about how hard it is because he has to, like, activate it on different parts of his body at, like, different times.
Yeah, he has to put effort into it. But, like, you're trying to be a hero, my guy.
Exactly. No, I mean, he utilizes it really well. But his fight with Overhaul is pretty solid.
Overhaul's broken.
I mean,
my
yeah.
God. What the balls, dude? Okay, so Overhaul is a strong quirk. I'm peeking like a mother, dude. Overhaul is an incredibly strong quirk. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Anything the man touches, up to and including people, he can deconstruct and then reconstruct however he wants to.
Yeah, it's pretty insane.
And the area of effect that he has is quite large. It's not like just the size of his hand. It's I touch you on your shoulder, you disapparate into a cloud of blood, and then I combine our biomasses together, up to and including taking your quirk. Which there are so many quirks in the show that incidentally steal or copy quirks. Like duplicate.
Oh,
He has double. He can make a thing. Anything. He can make people with quirks. And yes, the people that he makes are fragile, which is to say if they take a certain amount of damage, they explode, which is how he phrases it. Okay, cool. But the guy that you just made had the guy's quirk. So if you make a copy of, say, Yaomomo, who pulls stuff out of her body, anything out of her body, cool. Now your quirk is everybody's quirk.
They like specifically talk later down the line about how like if Twice was like mentally stable, his quirk would probably be like one of the strongest quirks in the world.
Yeah, because it's effectively everyone else's quirk.
And they like the heroes are specifically like wary of him because they're like his quirk could literally be the downfall of all of us. Which I think is really cool. He's actually a really good character.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up the term mentally stable because that's actually a pretty good segue into this show has an interesting relationship with mental health. We find out later that Twice has had like a very rough moment. Actually, I think we've already had that moment so far. I think we learned that in season 3 or something. He had his quirk materialized itself for a long time as just making doubles of himself. And so he basically suffered the death of the ego and is in the point where he has multiple personality disorders because he's lost all sense of self because he forgot which him is him. So now there's this thing where if he's ever outside of his mask, he starts to just snap. He goes. Which is like, okay, yeah, fair enough. It is. He and a couple other characters, like, you're trying to represent something, and I appreciate you trying, but I'm not sure if you're tokenizing it. In his case, I don't think so, just because he is more important. He's a member of the League of Villains, by the way. The people who were a subplot in this first arc. The League of Villains are kind of whatever. We do learn that the League of Villains use preferred pronouns in this arc, so, that's awesome. Yeah. They're evil, they're not bad guys, you know what I'm saying? Toga deserves to wear clothes more. Well, Toga's a terrible character, but she deserves to wear clothes more.
The whole purpose of the League of Villains is that they're all people that were kind of made bad by society. Like, they're not like people that are like just inherently evil. They're kind of all people that were just kind of wronged by society.
Which, that may be the point that they're trying to make, but they have not established it by this point.
Well, I mean, yeah, they don't establish it until we get a lot of their character development. But
she's a step on you, and by that I mean she's going to stab you and then ingest your blood. And so she's like real weird stalker girl. Her quirk is once she drinks enough of your blood, she can turn into you up to and including using your quirk. Also busted, but she does have to get some of your blood. They go out of their way to write in that she can't bring her clothes with her, so she has to get naked when she does it. This author is a pervert, and it's not something worth joking about, because it is, there are aspects of it that are deeply problematic. This author is a pervert. I cannot wait for this franchise to move past the high school setting. She deserves clothes. She's a bad character. She deserves clothes. Speaking of characters who deserve clothes, the only character to die that we're supposed to care about is All Might's former sidekick by the name of Night Eye. We're introduced to him in this first arc. Night Eye sucks ass. His power's kind of busted, but he's a terrible character. The first thing we see of him is he non-consensually straps his female employee into a tickle machine and leaves her there. And nobody talks about it. And she's basically not wearing a shirt. Bubble Girl, that's just sort of her character design. It's not like he strips her, in his defense. Bubble Girl is also a bad character. In this case, it's because she doesn't have a character. But she's so interesting, like visually, because it's like the author was like, how do I give her every article of clothing whilst also maintaining the most exposed skin? I'll give her a shirt that stops mid-boob. I'll give her a jacket that stops mid-boob. It's so stupid. I'll give her shorts that don't cover the tops of her ass cheeks. Like, it's not even like Daisy Duking it, like, butt out the bottom. It's like the tops are exposed in some shots, and it's like, what is this? Who are you, sir? I don't actually, like, need to know his name. That's not like...
Well, no, I'm pretty sure Bubble Girl was actually, like, a fan design.
Well...
Which makes it even worse.
Then the fan's also a pervert. But also, why is she in the tickle machine?
I mean, I agree. I mean, her whole design is just terrible.
Anyway. Night Eye dies. Oh, wow, big sad. It's not even kind of sad. Fuck him.
Yeah, well, you know that this is also just, like, bad because, yeah, it was a fan design that they did a contest where fans could design heroes, and then, like, 2 of them won, and they actually became both of Night Eye's, like, sidekicks. Like, the Centipede guy is also a fan design.
Centipeder! He makes me so uncomfortable.
But, like, the fact that she won just tells me everything I need to know about both the person that designed her and the author.
Yeah, I hate Centipeder. He's a centipede man in a butler's outfit, and he throws centipedes and I hate Centipeder. Yeah, so Overhaul ends up getting defeated.
And then they literally just stop talking about it. I don't know if you noticed that. It just kind of bugged me because, like, Midoriya wins, and then, like, one hero is like, wow, nice job, and then, like, literally no one ever talks about it again. And you'd think it would be kind of a big deal that Deku just beat the villain of this arc, who, like, none of the other heroes could even come close to beating.
Yeah, nobody's like, hey, Deku, that was really cool. People were like, okay, cool. We did it, guys. GG. Better luck next week.
It was just so weird. I was like, okay. But he wins because of Eri, because Eri, like, basically starts rewinding his body. But then Deku's like, oh, in order to survive, I'll just start breaking my body as fast as she's rewinding it.
Which, if you haven't watched the first few seasons, makes sense. So, because Deku was given All Might's quirk, they talk about how since he didn't have it naturally, he didn't have the time for his body to adjust to it. And it's so strong that the power of the force that he's exerting breaks his bones. It's a really big thing for, like, the first 3 seasons, and, like, he's learning to control it. Right now, his, like, big arc isn't I can't get stronger, it's I can't use my power safely. Highest he can get to is 20% right now without, like, injuring himself. But he can go all out, which would normally break every bone in his body because Ares rewinding him. So he just kicks so much ass. But he is doing, like, I'm kicking the air fast enough that the air pressure is, like,
pushing me. Yeah.
I hate it. I love it, but I hate it. Lemillion has honestly my favorite fight in the entire season.
Yeah.
Lemillion going up against Overhaul is so cool. And Lemillion loses his powers here by being shot by one of those quirk bullets because the villains were like, oh, he goes through things. Well, if he doesn't want to get shot, then he can make the bullet go through him. So if we shoot at the girl that he's trying to save, he can't protect her and also himself. What I don't like is he does the Piccolo thing, the very anime thing of I don't have time to save you, so I'll just stand in front of you, which always happens with enough time to save them both and just move. It's a very powerful scene, though. Like, actually, in the moment, it's very powerful. I actually really started liking Lemillion in this first arc. Deku and Lemillion are doing like a patrol as part of a work-study program, and they actually come across Eri and Overhaul in that moment. And there's a very, like, character-defining moment for the two of them where they have to ignore signs of abuse because Overhaul is the number one suspect, and since their like boss isn't there and all that they know about him is that he's incredibly dangerous, they can't force the confrontation there. Deku, being a good boy, says no, and he is trying to force the confrontation. Lemillion, knowing like the stakes of everything, is sort of like trying to get everything to just like under the rug, pretend you didn't see it. It's a very triggering moment if you are sensitive to like survivors of domestic violence. It's a fair warning to you. But it does a very good job of setting them up for the rest of the arc, because Deku is angry that he couldn't save her in that moment, but Lemillion is hating himself that he didn't act in that moment, which is part of the reason why he goes so hard into keeping her safe. Very good, very fun character moments. Goddamn, Duplicate is cracked. You can't just... Okay, so this is the arc where they give you the in-character reason why Toga's naked after using her ability. You cannot explain it away, because you could just have made it not be that way, sir. In Arc 2... What's Arc 2 again?
It's just the really short one with Deku and... Or not, Bakugo and Todoroki, like, going to their provision. They failed their test to get their provisional licenses, which, like, allow you to be an acting superhero in the real world. Like, once you have your provisional license, you still have to, like, be with another hero, but, like, you now have the rights to act in case of an emergency or something.
Yeah, it basically deputizes you to like do police equivalent of citizen's arrest, or like superhero equivalent of citizen arresting.
And like this arc is kind of utilized as like a little bit of character development for them, because the whole reason they didn't get there was because they're both hot-headed, and there's another character here
Wind Boy!
I literally can't remember his name.
Wind Boy!
But he's from a different superhero school, and they all basically failed because they were just all up in each other's business and getting angry at each other instead of just saving people. And so this is kind of just meant to be a little bit of character development where like they have to deal with a class of elementary schoolers who are all just like crazy and all over the place, and even their teacher can't control them.
Yeah.
And I mean, I liked it because I don't necessarily hate Bakugo and Todoroki, but...
So, I will say, I ended up liking this mini arc better than I thought I would at the end of like it getting introduced to us. It does do two things that I hate. So in that arc with the provisional licensing exam, we're introduced to a character by the name of Cammy, who turns out, spoiler alerts for season 3, at the time was being body doubled by Toga. And so at the time, you're like, oh, she's just horny because she's Toga. Turns out, Cammy just is a horny valley girl, which Cammy deserved better. Didn't like that. The other thing that I don't like about this arc in general is I hate children characters. I find them so incredibly obnoxious. And this was a couple of episodes of a lot of children characters, which, again, kind of goes back to like saying how Eri's so well written. I love her. By the time her arc's over, I would kill to protect my precious little, like I love her. I was trying to say cinnamon bun, but I couldn't remember cinnamon bun. It's like precious little bear claw. No. Yeah. precious little.
I also think Eri has a really cute design. Like, it's kind of anime because she's got like the one little horn, but like I don't know, she's got a cute design.
Oh yeah, this arc. So this arc A is like minor character development for Icy Hot Patch and Byakugan, but it also introduces, and like this concept has kind of been introduced before, but it like really drives home that society is losing faith in superheroes because All Might's been forced into retirement, and he's like really like All Might's whole deal is being the symbol of peace. He's the one who's like holding public faith, and he's the one who's really deterring crime because you can't step to All Might. Well, he's been forced into retirement and was done, and that happened in front of the whole world on live TV. So villains who had prior to that, villains were like, well, we need to tear down the society, and they have like a point or a couple of them. But this is like the first ones that are like, yeah, these kids watch the news. They've seen all of these terrible villain attacks that have happened in season 1 and season 2 and season 3. They don't feel confident in heroes and being kindergartners with the ability to materialize cannons out of their mouths. They, between that and the natural like kid thinking you know and can do more than you can, they think they can do better, and so they're unruly AF. So like that's sort of like, it doesn't get introduced, but it gets driven home in that. It's like 3 or 4 episodes.
Well, and this also kind of is utilized as a moment because Endeavor and All Might like go to this little test to just kind of observe, because Todoroki is Endeavor's son, and there's a good moment because this is kind of setting up the points for Endeavor to be the number 1 hero, because I think he has a really good conversation with All Might where he's like, all right, what does it mean to be the symbol of peace? And All Might is like, bro, you just gotta figure it out for yourself because we all do it differently. And I like that All Might is basically like, you just have to do what feels right. And it's like, Endeavor is not a good person, but he also doesn't want the world to fall into chaos. You know, it's like, I think it's 2 sides of a coin, because it's ultimately setting up what led Endeavor to his obsessiveness with power, you know, because he could never match up to All Might. But now he's just kind of in All Might's position.
And one thing that I like that All Might says here is he's like, not only does he say like you have to do things your own way, but he's like straight up says you don't have to be the symbol of peace. That was my thing that I was going for. You can just be the number 1 hero. And in being that and not trying to copy me, people are going to feel more secure in you, because if you're trying to copy me, people are going to feel that something's off. Unequivocally, Endeavor is a abuser of the physical and emotional varieties of his wife and children. Unapologetically, unflinchingly. The show has not tried to make you forgive or forget that up until the last couple episodes of this season. But that is something that has very well been established and is delivered in a pretty unflinching way. So, if you are going to watch the show, just be aware of that. Yeah, the third mini arc is School Festival arc, which is... This is the most recent high school bullshit that happens in this show, but not in the derogatory. High school bullshit, parentheses, endearing. Because it is, like, honestly a very fun little arc. My 2 favorite parts about this is, 1, Eri, Lemillion, and Deku have a really solid My Two Dad vibes this entire arc, and I love it. 2, Lemillion, when he's not in his school uniform, dresses like he should be in a skank circle. Like, he's got checkered like overalls. He's wearing some good old skanking shoe. Like that boy definitely gets high and then listens to Less Than Jake, right? Like 1,000%. This kid definitely bought a hat after listening to Hell of a Hat. Like this kid rocks.
I don't know like
Lemillion
anything you're talking about.
I love him.
I love him too. He's really fun. And this kind of becomes the arc for Jiro, who's also one of my favorite characters.
Hero named Earphone Jack. Ramona Flowers for Another Generation.
She just has a great design, and her whole quirk is related to sound. Like her earlobes have like earphone jacks that like just kind of hang off of them, and she can like plug them into things and like blow sound through them.
Yeah.
She's got a cool power, but she's also a musician, and so like I don't know. My opinions on this arc are I feel like she could have been done more justice, because like the whole arc kind of boils down to like she doesn't feel like her music is worthwhile because it's not really a hero thing. And then it's like, oh, but it is actually because she can make people smile. It just felt kind of like forced, in my opinion.
Okay, so what I will say is I don't think that's what the point was. So what she has a flashback at the end while they're performing, and it's more about her letting her professional musician parents know that even though she feels like she was supposed to follow in their footsteps and that they spent all of this time making music a part of her life, she wants to be a superhero rather than a musician. It's finding her own path and choosing a life for herself. That's more of what it is rather than music isn't for superheroes.
Okay, because I mean, I get that. I just don't think that was conveyed that well, in my opinion.
I mean, what I said is verbatim what they like.
Well, no, I know that they say that like at the end of the like performance or like in the midst of the performance, but like, and I remember that. I just don't feel like it hit as well as it could have, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because we didn't set it up at all, right? Like this is the first time we learn anything about her. This is the first time she gets to be a character in 4 seasons. And the only other kind of character moment that we have for her is when Grape Kun, Trash Boy, Garbage Man, being a perv in the locker room's like, hey, you know what's on the other side of this locker room wall? The girls' locker. You know what our previous generations have drilled into this hole? People. I'm going to perv on the girls. That's the only other time that she gets character motivation or like any type of character dialogue. And you know what she says? When he's listing the people he's perving after, she's upset that she wasn't one of them. That's the only other piece of character development we get for her. And it's really gross and weird and awful. So on a scale of that to this,
I mean,
this is pretty good.
It's better. I just think I just wish that she had been more of a focus, because this arc kind of it's kind of like pulled in like many directions.
Like 5.
Because like there's also a whole part of it where like there's this gentle criminal guy who's like basically a YouTuber villain, but then like he comes up with this plot to basically break into the UA school festival, but he just wants to do it so that he's remembered. And it's like, okay, cool. I feel like either this should have been its own arc, or the thing with Jiro should have been its own arc. They shouldn't have been combined into this one, because then also Deku kind of takes half the spotlight.
Yeah, 1,000%. Like, I'm not going to say that it was well paced or well done, and like it was definitely forced into like 1 2-minute montage or 1 2-minute flashback, right? Like it's not a great moment, but the point isn't. Music isn't for superheroes. It's a following your passion thing. it very much felt more like a following your passion thing rather than music isn't hero-y.
Yeah, but I mean, she still seems very passionate about music, I guess.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Gentle Criminal is so goofy and I love him. Big asterisk. Gentle Criminal is we find out is a dropout of a hero program who, through trying to do the right thing, got absolutely shafted. So now he's this like gentleman thief type gimmick. Love it. We love it. He wears big, silly Victorian poofy pants. He wears a classic Phantom Thief outfit. He has a big old mustache. There's a point where he says, oh, let me find it exactly because it deserves it. They can't win against my mustache and my soul. Let's go, gentleman villain. He has tea time. He makes tea menacingly. He gives himself away because he gets excited to talk to Deku about tea. Like, he's such a goober, and I love him, and he could be the perfect character. But, his sidekick, La Brava. I feel like there's an R after the V.
No, it's Brava. It's just La Brava.
La Brava. Is it just La Brava? Wow. I heard it very wrong then. Anyway, La Brava. So she's like his filmer and the one who like actually makes his content worth watching. Like she edits for him and all that. But she's also his fangirl. And that's how they met. Now, it is not made clear in any way, shape, or form how much time passed in any of their backstory. Their backstory is as follows. First year of middle school, La Brava sent a stalkery love letter to a boy. And the boy was talking to his friends, making fun of it. And he's like, yeah, I got a love letter from the short kid. And it's very clear she's been following me. And so she says that made her so depressed that she was thinking about killing herself. And then she watched Gentle Criminal's video. And she fangirled hard enough to have a reason to live again.
And also stalk him.
Not a great depiction of mental health. Again, show's not particularly great at it. Now, we do not know how much time passed between being a first-year middle schooler and that. And then we don't know how much time she spent actually working with him. She's a super genius with computers. She hacks her way into finding out where Gentle Criminal lives, shows up at his doorstep. Let me help you.
And then he's like, all right. Dope.
Yeah, he's just here for it. He doesn't ask any questions. And it's like, I turn on Gentle Criminal because of his relationship with La Brava, because it's weird.
Yeah.
If that wasn't there, perfect character.
It just feels bad. It's just like...
It would be fine, except
so
her quirk is love.
Yeah.
Which is to say, whoever she loves most in the world,
she can give a huge
power up to for a limited duration. The amount of the power is dependent on how much she loves the person. This puts this like not even D-list villain on par power-wise with Deku. Big, strong boy for the time that they're fighting. It's insane how strong that quirk is. But she and Gentleman Criminal exchange I love yous. Or Gentle Criminal, excuse me. Exchange I love yous at least twice. And we do not know if she's at all older than 12. And it's gross and it's awful and I hate it.
I looked it up. And she is apparently supposed to be 21, but it's also like there is zero evidence to support this. And seeing her backstory also does not support this. So it's just like everything is so vague that it's just like, why? Why does she have to look like a child, man?
Yeah. She looks like, and this is for my League players out there, she looks like a poppy skin. 100%.
Like, I kind of like the design of her face. Like, I think that her eyes are kind of cool, and like they really provide a very unique look to her character, but it's just like, make her look like an adult. It's that easy, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like all that there is for like the villain portion, but because they are like a beeline through this arc, it pulls you out of the school festival.
Well, and they like try to tie it all together because like while they're fighting, it like becomes this fight about Deku's dream versus Gentle's dream, and like Gentle's like, I just want to save. I this is what I've always wanted. I want to go down and like have people remember me, and the Deku's like, but you would do this at the cost of our happiness and our dreams, and he's like, but
Hell
my
yeah,
mustache and my soul.
Okay.
But I mean, that's the
Buy
good
my
part.
mustache and my soul, though.
But
Powerful
then,
line.
yeah, that's just kind of how they try to tie it into everything.
Yeah, it's so weird.
It's just kind of forced. Like, even Deku fighting Gentle feels very forced.
Yeah.
Because the whole reason they even run into each other is because Deku has to go buy some new rope for their performance, and then, oh my god, he just so happened to run into him, and then Deku's like, oh my god, I know this tea, and then Gentle's like, wait, you know that tea?
He can't stop himself from gushing over the tea.
And then Deku kind of just like puts two and two together. It's the most just like leaps of logic. It's like Deku's like, oh my god, this guy must be that guy.
Yeah, no, like,
And then they start fighting.
yeah, 100%.
Just plot contrivances, basically.
He has a cool ability. Elasticity is cracked, dude.
Oh yeah, no, he can basically turn anything that he touches elastic, including the air, so he can kind of just like bounce around through the air. Basically just has flight, if you look at it that way.
Yeah, he has trampoline based flight. He summons a trampoline, jumps on it, summons a trampoline, jumps on it.
Yeah, I mean, overall, like, not a bad arc. I just think he kind of stretched it thin.
Yeah,
by like trying to have these
100%.
basically by forcing Deku to also have a part, when like Deku could have easily just taken the sideline for this arc.
Yeah, 100%.
And
Yeah, the concert's fun though.
yeah,
They basically made an AMV and then wrote a plot around it, is what this arc is. Byakugan and Bird Boy joined the band. Bird Boy just Jimi Hendrixes it up. Byakugan is a shoeless drummer, which is actually a pretty cool flavor thing, if like just the difference between drummers who drum with like bare feet or not. And like it's confirmed because like we watch him do some double pedal stuff, but he's not wearing shoes, and it's not like, oh, he's in his dorm, he's not going to wear shoes. When he steps away from the drum set, he puts his shoes back on. So it's like, oh, hey, actually, yeah, that was like a conscious choice.
I didn't remember that.
I
definitely did
as
not
a
pay
fellow
attention to
shoeless drummer, found that very fun. I hate him though. He's still a terrible character. Don't get me wrong.
I don't know. I mean, like, he
I
is.
know. Don't get me wrong.
He is, but I genuinely kind of enjoyed some of his like comedy bits in this arc in particular. Just like his whole thing about like, we've got to just like kill them with our song. I don't know. I thought that was
Like,
actually genuinely kind of funny.
He's better in this arc because he's chilled the fuck out for no reason.
Yeah, and
like,
he just kind of continues to chill out.
Like the difference between Bakugan and like at the end of season 3 and at the start of season 4, and then at the start of season 4 and then episode 3 of season 4 and then episode 3 of season 4 and like episode 7 of season, like there's no moments that character that like would explain why he's choosing to be less of a tool, but he just sort of is, which is nice because oh god, I'm sick of the one joke. Yeah, then we just sort of have the rest. So Deku made a promise to Eri to like take her to the school festival. So she and Lemillion get to have a very fun My Two Dads moment, and I really like it.
I just remembered Lemillion's actual name. It's Mirio.
Mirio?
Yeah.
It's a me, Mirio.
Mirio Togata.
Yeah, and then we sort of get a montage of the rest of the school festival.
And Eri actually smiles, and that's a pretty solid moment.
Honestly, this arc, even with Gentle Criminal, does a very good job of lowering the stakes whilst keeping you invested.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
Like, everything that's on the line here is just personal feelings, but they contextualize it and make you care in such a powerful way. Like Deku's promise to Eri and how we've come to care for Eri and like what this day means to her is why you need to fight Gentle Criminal.
Yeah.
There's no reason Gentle Criminal couldn't just do this tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, there is a strong...
Everyone would have been happy if he just did this tomorrow.
There is a strong through line, that's for sure, which I think does tie it together pretty well in the end.
Yeah. So the other first year class has a couple of characters, one of which has got really bad imposter syndrome. We've seen them before. They're just sort of around. They're another reason why I hate that we spend so much time on Icy Hot Patch and Byakugan, because we've had their character arc moments over and over and over again. But we have an entire cast of kids in this other class that we've seen a total of like maybe 30 minutes, let alone all of the kids who are also in Class 1A that we've also only seen for like a total of 30 minutes. Like, the reason why the first arc was so dope is that these kids that we've seen forever, we finally learned something about. We don't know it. We don't know anything about half of Deku's class still, let alone Class 1B.
Yeah.
Anyway, Class 1B throws on my favorite comedy bit, which is Romeo and Juliet in The Prisoner of Azkaban,
The Return of the King.
The Return of the King.
Yeah, I love that.
They wrote a hodgepodge of The Return of the King, Prisoner of Azkaban, and Romeo and Juliet, and performed it as a play for the school festival. I kind of love it.
Yeah.
There's a beauty pageant sub arc, which is weird and awful, and I hate it. Bring back a terrible child character from season 2, which is funny because it just really contextualizes how much better of a child character Eri is. We run into the Wild Wild Pussycats. I love them. They're just sort of there for no good reason. And then we talk about how Endeavor gets ranked the #1 hero in Japan. And then we're introduced to the hook for the next season.
Oh, dude, but I don't know about you, but I love Endeavor's fight at the end of this season. And, I mean, I can detail why, but I also want to know how you feel about it.
I think the fight's fine. I don't think it's an interesting fight. It's a beautiful fight, but it's not an interesting fight, because the fight is, I shot him with fire.
Well, I mean,
I shot him with fire again,
but...
and then I can't shoot any more fire, so I'm going to put myself on fire and then put myself in his mouth.
I mean,
don't get me wrong. It's a visually impressive moment.
You just ripped all of the interesting aspects out of it.
But that's what the fight is.
I mean, it is, but
fire powers are beautiful,
fun.
But they don't leave for interesting fight choreography.
I mean, yeah, okay, you can say that the choreography wasn't fine, but I think that the author did an incredible job of contextualizing this fight as the thing that would basically make or break people's opinions of Endeavor. Because if he couldn't pull through in the end, there wasn't gonna be basically stability,
trust in heroes.
And yes, it doesn't have a whole lot of choreography. Ultimately, it's a pretty short fight, but I kind of like fights like this that are very to the point. And honestly, just that final prominence burn when he shoots up into the sky it's just a very cathartic moment, and it definitely made me feel something when he's reflecting on why the fuck he even wants to be a hero. But
I mean, like, yeah, it definitely could be worse. Like, there were stakes to the fight, but because the fight is introduced and then resolved over the span of like an episode and a half,
That's kind of why I liked it so much.
but like, what it boils, and also part of the reason why I don't like it, I think, is we haven't seen enough of Endeavor to like contextualize his power scale. So a lot of it is being talked to about why what he's doing is dangerous for him. It's like, oh, this may kill him. Oh, this may kill him. Oh, this may kill him. And then it doesn't kill him. And it's like, okay, cool. So we're supposed to take we take your word that it's dangerous, even though we haven't seen enough to know that it's like, it's kind of a case of telling rather than showing. Whilst, and like, again, don't get me wrong, it's a very beautiful fight.
Yeah.
But
even
it's shoot fire, fly with fire.
I don't know. Maybe it has more of an impact because I kind of already know where Endeavor's character ends up. But even when I first read it in the manga, like before I had read a lot of his character arc, it really like hit me, and I don't know, like I've struggled to pinpoint exactly why that is. Like it actually like kind of made me emotional, just like seeing him like, struggle because like we don't really know him, but like I think that the fight sets up why we should like it does a good job of kind of introducing his character. That's kind of why I like it, but I don't know if my thoughts are that concise on that because I've kind of struggled to pinpoint exactly what it is that I like so much about that fight.
I mean, that's fair. Yeah, I don't know if I feel like I left the situation, and I'm not saying that you're wrong or trying to fight it, and I feel the need to specify this because it immediately sounds like I'm going to do that. I don't know if I feel like I learned anything about or contextualized him at all during this fight.
Yeah.
It is like the first time that we get to see him fight, which is nifty. And it is kind of cool to see like what the power of like the guy who's the number one hero is for the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a fight, and it's a fun fight, but it's not a good fight, in my opinion. This episode I really hate because unequivocally it introduces his redemption, not from like anything like hero related, but from his history of domestic violence. And I'm sure as that arc continues, it's handled better. But as it stands, we're introduced to the concept of him redeeming himself by having the battered spouse tell the adult children who are still mad at their dad to stop being mad at their dad because he's trying. Which we haven't seen him do at any point. And having the primary victim be the one to tell you that feels very dismissive and very hand-waving of survivors of domestic violence.
Yeah.
And I think it's handled incredibly poorly. Apropos of the fight's very good. The fight's good enough that I kind of forgot how much I hate Endeavor. Like, it's a beautiful fight. It's super fun. I don't think it's an interesting fight just because, like,
yeah,
he shoots him and then he shoots him again. Kind of like how when, like, after All Might's fight in season 1, all of the other All Might fights are only interesting because you know that his time is up sooner or later. It's not interesting because, okay, cool, bigger punch, bigger still punch, right? Like, bigger wrist punch is All Might fights. Endeavor is big fire, bigger wrister fire, right? Yeah. So, like, in that aspect, it's not it isn't good, but it's like it is so much in the moment that, like, yeah, I kind of forgot how much I hate him as a person because it was a fun fight.
I think the thing that like really gets to me during that fight is when like there's that person like on the television that's like basically like screaming that like people like shouldn't just like give up hope. But I mean, like that might just be very shallow. But I mean, like when like Todoroki is watching and like pretty much the whole world is watching this, like I don't know if it necessarily rivals the All Might moment, but like I do think it is just a very important story beat, because it's like we had to see this happen, and like Endeavor almost lost. Like his whole face got like scarred, and like honestly I love what he looks like after this, because he just has this giant scar that's just like all the way down his face now.
Good.
I also loved the idea that like his power has a practical use, because he basically just like cauterizes the wound like instantly, so that like it doesn't threaten his life more.
I wish they brought that up. I don't think they tell you that.
I mean, they don't, but I mean, like...
But, like, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. I'm producing fire from my body.
But they talk about it, like, later on. He, like, utilizes it a few times. But what I was going to say is, like, I'm not going to, like, dismiss that, like, the line that his wife has is, like... not the greatest, but, like, I think that that's an interesting moment, because, like... the son who specifically hates Endeavor like brings him up, and then the daughter is like, oh, we shouldn't talk about this. But then like it's kind of more of like a moment, in my opinion, where like the son bringing up their father who did this terrible shit to them, like the wife or like I just like can't remember her name, but their mother is like getting to a point where she can like at least discuss it. And like I never took it as she was like, you should just forgive him, but she was like, we just have to like accept that he is trying to atone. And I don't feel like in that moment she's like specifically trying to like tell them to just outright forgive him, you know? But it's something you could talk about forever.
Yeah.
I mean, you could also like just watch the scene and like talk about like the way that the line is given, you know, and all that stuff.
Yeah, but... and the lighting and the musical swell and the smile on her. Like for me, it's because it's specifically the fact that like the older sister is basically saying, let's not talk about this in front of mom.
Yeah.
Who up until like last season was comatose because of the abuse.
Yeah.
Right? Like we've set it up to such an incredible scale, and at this point we're introducing the concept of Endeavor trying not to be an absolute piece of shit of human being, but we haven't seen him do anything.
Exactly.
And so
it's hard, but
it's too hard. It goes too hard into it too early. Specifically, like if it was just the mom going, no, we can talk about it, that'd be one thing. It'd be a very good scene. But she's specifically telling them to like lay off their dad, because like the older brother is legitimately like, yeah, like he's down on Endeavor because he should be. And she basically tells him to go easy on his father. And
yeah, no, I mean, I don't think I'm not going to like defend it, but I definitely feel like I need to like rewatch the scene now. Because I feel like it's hard, because it's like I kind of don't remember it the same way, you know? So it's just like, it's interesting to think about, you know?
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, you have a lot more experience with those things, so I think you have a stronger / different framing of it, you know, than I do.
I'm definitely more critical of it at the very least.
Yeah, exactly.
And if there's one thing that may summarize our friendship, that I am more critical.
Yeah.
And then it sets up like to a point that you were making earlier. It does definitely successfully, even. I was going to say try, but it does successfully set up parallels between All Might's last fight ever and Endeavor's first fight as the number one hero, right? Like he even strikes the same pose at the end.
Yeah.
And so like it is the culmination of, does society have someone to put their faith in? The answer was almost no.
Yeah, exactly.
But yes. And so like all of that, like I think part of it is we don't see like more petty crime. Like, we're told that crime rates are going up, but we never see it because this season is so focused on these miniature arcs.
Yeah.
And so, like, this fight is to, like, bring that plot point home / set up whatever season 4 is. But it does feel very rushed. Like, the greater significance feels a little bit rushed.
That's fair. Yeah.
In general.
I mean, all I can really say is it just kind of picks up from here.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure the show gets better and better the further and further they get from high school.
Yeah.
Like, what I will say, and what I really appreciate about this season is that we go from, like, the start of the fall semester, like, summer had just ended, to it's damn near Christmas by the end of it, which is so refreshing because some of these seasons drag on. Like, there's an entire season that's just a 2-week span of summer. It's like, there's a summer camp season. Like,
yeah.
So, like, it is genuinely one of those things where, like, it's so hamstringed as a setting being attached to, like, high school because you kind of don't have the framework to explore some of those greater societal impacts, and also they're high schoolers.
Yeah.
So there's just high school tropes that are going to be present.
For sure.
All in all, worth watching if you're looking for something to watch. If you don't like shonen,
Yeah.
and if you don't like high school stuff, it's rough.
Yeah. I mean, but if you don't like shonen, I do think that this is one of the stronger ones. I haven't experienced them all, but
if you don't like this, then shonen, like, if you've given some shonens a try and you're on the fence about them, if you're at the point where you're like, I don't know if I don't like this show or if I don't like this genre, this is a strong contender for, like, being a very archetypical shonen that executes itself pretty well, all things being equal.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're trying to give the genre a try, this is definitely worth cutting your teeth on. Again, super duper recommend skipping episodes 1 and 2 of both season 1 and season 4. It's better
plenty.
paced for it.
Okay.
So, Forrest, I do not use social media because I am bad at it. But you have things.
Yeah. I make music, mostly like electronic kind of synth music. I go by the name Bustello, which is Bustello. You can find me on YouTube or Spotify or Bandcamp. And I've got a second project called Prism Ship. Yeah, check me out there. That's PRISMSHIP. Thanks for listening.
Oh, wait. I'm going to have you say thanks for listening again in a moment. Okay. But I just remembered there's a background hero that's definitely a Rayman homage, like the PlayStation platformer Rayman. He has the same face, and his power is he shoots glowing golden fists.
Oh, was that one of the guys that, like, helped out in that fight with Endeavor?
Yeah.
Those two random heroes that were just like, we'll help out.
And then proceed to not be effective
they don't, like,
at
literally
out.
Do anything.
But one of them's a classic platformer Rayman reference, and I saw him and I'm like, oh, yeah, I've played that game.
That's cool.
Anyway, do the roar. Say the line.
Thanks for listening.
Goodbye.